This week's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Stamps.com. Since 1998, Stamps.com has been an indispensable tool for nearly 1 million businesses. Stamps.com brings the services of the U.S. Postal Service and UPS shipping right to your computer. Whether you're an office sending invoices, a side hustle Etsy shop, or a full-blown warehouse shipping out orders, Stamps.com will make your life easier. All you need is a computer and a standard printer. No special supplies or equipment. Within minutes, you're up and running, printing official postage for any letter, any package, anywhere you want to send. And you'll get exclusive discounts on postage and shipping from USPS and UPS. Once your mail is ready, just schedule a pickup or drop it off. No traffic, no lines. With Stamps.com's new Rate Advisor tool, you can compare shipping rates and timelines to easily find the best option. Save time and money with Stamps.com. There's no risk, and with our promo code POD, that's P-O-D, you get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in P-O-D for POD. That's Stamps.com, promo code POD, Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again. And now on to our show. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 32 of Formidable Opponents, a show that fits 3 people who have known each other virtually their entire lives in a series of conversations as we argue what is the best in a variety of fun, engaging, and critical pop culture topics we all debate about. I'm Randall, and with me as always, Bob and Joseph, and today's topic is best nostalgic Halloween movie. Halloween wouldn't be Halloween without scary movies. Much like Christmas, Halloween occupies a huge space in our childhood. In that childhood, many of us had to get our scary movie training wheels attached before we could actively ride into the world of demons, the possessed, and of course, vegetarian trolls. It is with these movies the tracks were laid. They allowed us to build up a callus, the types of movies schools were allowed to show in the 80s or 90s, but couldn't get away with today. So whether you're into classic monsters, family-friendly horror, or rhythmless dancing from very white witches, we have all your bases covered. This week, we discuss what is the best nostalgic Halloween movie. Bob and Joseph, how are you guys doing?
Very, very good. How's everybody doing, man? It's a really good time right now.
How about them Astros, baby? How about them Astros?
I'm happy right now. We got some fun times. Go ahead. Really great to be back, everybody. It seems like when we, like Randy mentioned the last time, when we do that little break and then we're jumping into another one, it seems like we just did the other one like 2 days ago. So it's really weird.
So happy to continue our conversation on Halloween movies, guys. And this week we're going a little lighter. We're not talking about the possessed, the demons, the scary movies that we all that kept us
Randy,
up.
Yeah, Randy wants to sleep tonight.
Yeah. He wants to go on the lighter side.
That's why we ended it on candy last time.
Wait till you find out what we're ending it on this time. So we're going to talk a little nostalgic Halloween movies. We're going to dig back into our childhood, you know, and with these nostalgic Halloween movies, guys, it has to have camp value. Of course, it has to be dated and has to take you back to a specific moment in time. And it either has to age really well or age badly. So I want to start off by asking you guys, what are the biggest differences in Halloween movies from our childhood from the ones today?
From our childhood, at least, considering, you know, when we did the research for what we're doing today, a lot of things that were probably, I guess, I don't know, maybe PG-13 didn't need to mean PG-13. You know, I noticed that when we were watching a movie last night. I guess nowadays we were probably, if it's a kid's movie, it's gonna, or okay, we're talking about Halloween movies. We're going the nostalgia route, so probably, you know, we're talking about them when we were kids. So if I'm gonna say a difference between maybe something nostalgic for the Halloween movies today, I guess for kids, is that what we're kind of doing? I don't want to.
Yeah, kind of like our childhood, like what we started off watching.
So childhood Halloween movies today, maybe for the kids in the future. I mean, a lot of animated shit nowadays. We don't see too many. Like I think recently we had the Goosebump movies, right? Something like that. Yeah, so I mean, we still have our silly, fun Halloween movies still coming out there, but they're not as many as when we look back at our maybe teenage years or preteen years.
They're not making any more earnest, scared, stupid.
Yeah. They're not doing they weren't all silly Halloween back then, but I mean, when we look at them now, we kind of like, but that's what made them so good, like back then, I think. And we're not really seeing that today. I think there was a Halloween movie, but I don't want to mention it right now because I'll talk about it a little bit later. So, but yeah, I mean, that the biggest difference I think is probably it's very much geared. If it's going to be a kid nostalgia or kid Halloween movie, it's going to be very much geared towards the kid. Not going to have the subtle jokes that the adults can get.
Yeah, I get that 100%. A lot of the ones we're going to talk about today, they're like the 80s and 90s movies, those nostalgic Halloween movies that we watched when we were younger, when we were kids or teens. And, you hit the nail on the head again, like I guess the nostalgic or not nostalgic, but the Halloween movies that are geared towards kids, that really are geared towards kids. You're not going to hear a lot of fucks and shits and assholes. And you know what I mean? Like the kids, I mean, they'd show kids cussing, junior high kids cussing in like the 80s movies. And you'll definitely not see that nowadays anymore. I really like those because, like you mentioned, you'd watch those or the nostalgic horror movies or the ones we're going to talk about. They had a lot of stuff, even though it may have been like a kid's movie or a teen movie, it still had a lot of adult, themes or, cussing and still scary monsters or death scenes or stuff like that. As far as it being a Halloween movie, were they comical? Yeah. But I think the ones nowadays are a little more playful and really geared towards like the young kids.
I agree. I have in my notes, there's no semblance of realism, where I think in the 80s and 90s, you had some sort of underlying tone, whether it was bullying or casts or, friends finding one another. And it's all completely silly now. And there's really nothing to be scared of. I was watching one last, I think, a couple of nights ago. It was a Disney movie that my kids were watching. It was called Unwrapped or something like that. It was about a bunch of kids who discovered a mummy. And I was watching this and I was like, cool. They're producing these Halloween movies for kids and you're watching it and it's like, this is completely like, I mean, it missed the mark. My kids loved it. But I mean, for me, I was like, where's like the spirit of it? It just seems like a cash grab or a ratings ploy.
I remember on Nick at Night, they used to show Are You Afraid of the Dark? I remember we used to watch those, and even those episodes had some like creepy stuff in them. And this is on Nickelodeon, so nowadays you won't see. I guarantee you won't see anything like that, like on a Disney Channel or Nickelodeon. I know they even tried to do a remake of Are You Afraid of the Dark, but I don't know if it hit really well. I never really checked it out. But I remember the original ones that we watched when we were kids. That was fucking. They had some creepy episodes.
That and if you were able to stay up at night, we still had what was the time around I mean, I know it's not very much, it's not super Halloween, but it was on the air. I mean, we used to actually have a Tales from the Crypt show, so
yeah.
So I mean, we actually had things to watch back then, like we don't have that today. We don't have a Tales from the Crypt show. At least I don't think so. There's a Chucky, there's a Child's Play remake TV show, but I haven't checked that out yet. I'm interested in it, but
it's funny, Joseph, earlier on you mentioned Goosebumps, and Jack Black is in the Goosebumps, or the latest one, because we watched it.
He was in the first one.
Was it the first one?
Yeah, I didn't even know there was a second one because they were showing the second one on TV today, and I was looking at it real quick. I'm sorry, just to say, and I didn't see him in the cast, so I was like, oh, maybe he didn't do the second one. So, well, go ahead.
All that to say is that Jack Black, because the only time we remember him in a horror movie, and it's kind of an on-running joke, is when I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, where he played the annoying Rastafarian white guy who wanted to smoke weed and hit on Jennifer Love Hewitt. And now he's playing like an author, like he's an older guy now, and how times have changed. And I remember my kid saw that movie, and my son thought it was a little too much. I mean, he watched it, yeah, but he was like, wow, that was you could kind of tell he was like, wow, this is pretty scary. Uh-huh. So, but times have changed. I mean,
you can't try it till you buy it.
What for you guys makes a good nostalgic Halloween movie?
I think it's got to have a good mix of comedy and memorable lines, a lot of one-liners. It's got to be a little bit scary. I mean, it's Halloween, you know what I mean? It's got to have that. It's got to have at least a scene that kind of freaks you out or creeps you out, or you're like, makes you turn away a little bit. But I think it's got to be that perfect blend. I think they did a great job of that in the 80s and early 90s. They did that good blend of like comedy or like, a lot of those ones that we watched. They're funny, but they're also scary. It's a good little blend. I know there's a lot of cult classics we're going to be talking about today, but I think it has to have that good blend.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I guess because hey, we've already mentioned we're certain age group. We grew up in a certain time, so for us, we're gonna like what Bob mentioned. The '80s for us, that was we really liked those movies. The main thing, I guess, and maybe in the kids today or the teenagers today, the preteens will have their own selections when they're our age. But for us, it was for us, it's like when we were hanging out and checking out these movies. One, can we watch them again? The thing that's going to make it a great movie is if we can watch it over and over again, at least maybe once every year around this time, maybe twice during this time, and enjoy it. Even though we've seen these movies probably well over 100 times or so, I will sit down and watch it. I know the plot. I don't care. I'm going to watch the whole thing, just like it. And that's probably what's going to make, to me, that's what makes it great, is if we can just sit down and watch it tomorrow again, even though we've probably already watched them this week,
And also it works too well, like to add on to what you're saying. If we loved it when we were 12 years old, and now we're in our 30s and 40s, and we're loving it still, we're still watching it and still quoting it, that makes a great movie.
Still laughing at scenes. It's just great, man. It's awesome. That's what makes them the best.
Absolutely. And I think for me, you got to have the right amount of scare / to me, those nostalgic Halloween movies are all about connections and friendships and the people you meet along the way. I was always more interested about the characters than I was about the monsters or the slasher or whatever. And I think we've lost that spirit a little bit. I don't know if it's just a new generation of acting or the storytelling. It's lighter, but you don't really get that, which leads me to my next question. We saw the success of Stranger Things, which has a lot of elements and inspiration from those 80s horror movies or horror comedies targeted to kids. Why is this genre almost completely extinct? And why did it take so long to make something like this? It was right there for the taking.
I don't know, man. I think people start getting into certain genres of horror, certain genres of music or movies or whatever they're into. Sometimes they're remaking or rehashing stuff from the 70s and then stuff from the 90s. I don't know. I guess the people that grew up in the 80s, around our age or a little bit older, in their 40s, they're the ones that are directing movies and writing movies now, and they're in the proper place to kind of get those ideas out there and to get their projects out there. Maybe that's the reason.
I think it's a good point.
I think maybe it's just was it going to be too cheesy back then, or is it not? I don't know. It's a really good question to ask, and really hard to come up with the best answer for it. Why did it take so long? My thing is, probably the only thing I can say is, were we afraid? Was it maybe a thing of like, is it something that we can do? Because we always talk about how, the stuff that was done in the 80s movies or things like that. We always mention that, a lot of that shit you can't do maybe today in a movie. There's probably going to be some questionable stuff that happened in some of the movies that we picked that we probably wouldn't see in movies today. So maybe it's like that. They got to, keep it PC, I guess, if you want to call it, at the same time, while still making it not super cheesy, but also giving it a great homage to what we saw before. So probably a lot goes into it. And it might be too much for some.
And also, we ran out of ideas, dude. I know we mentioned in our other podcast when we did the best slasher film. Fuck, people ran out of ideas for horror movies. The horror movie genre kind of went down the shitter for a while. In the 2000s, there wasn't a lot of great horror movies and slasher movies and stuff like that coming out. I think they had to go reach back into the well and get some ideas, some nostalgic ideas from like the 80s and the 90s, and try to get some of that magic back, I guess you could say, because, it was kind of downhill there for a while.
And good marketing, because the audiences that they're targeting are us, because we're going back for the nostalgia, and they're doubling it because we want to take our kids to see what we grew up on. So, it's exactly. Good marketing. It's good business. Let's go on to our honorable mentions, guys. Our honorable mentions for best nostalgic Halloween movie.
Oh, man, definitely. Got to start off with Beetlejuice. You have to start off with Beetlejuice. I think I've said it twice already. I love that movie. I still watch that movie religiously. It's a great, great cult classic. Michael Keaton nails it in this movie, man. He's such a great actor and plays such a great character. And the whole movie I watch over and over again. I also have Ghostbusters, Gremlins, Teen Wolf, American Werewolf in London, Fright Nights. Like, those are, when I think of movies, nostalgia movies, I think of those like 80s movies or early 90s movies. Yeah, I love Fright Night.
That's a good one.
For me, obviously I know we're talking about nostalgia and maybe stuff when we were kids, but I cannot not mention, at least, and I know we've talked about them already in other stuff, but I mean the original Halloween, the Friday the 13th Part 1, and the Nightmare on Elm Street. You can't not mention those as far as like nostalgic Halloween movies, whether or not you were you were too young to see it at the time, or if you saw a little bit later. The Ghostbusters are too scared. Ghostbusters movie, like Bob said, I mean, a great choice. Of course, I'll mention Beetlejuice as well. I mean, it's pretty. If you know me, you know my love of Beetlejuice. I got like more than like 4 or 5 T-shirts. I mean, I have 2 tattoos on my arm for Beetlejuice. I'm not done with that yet. Actually, I still got like 2 or 3 more pieces to add to my Beetlejuice arm. So clearly I'm a Beetlejuice fan, which is weird though, because I didn't pick it, but I will. But that's how much I do love that movie. And just real quick, I want to say this is a little bit different, but there was a Ghostbusters, the real Ghostbusters animated show. I know this is an animated type movie or TV show, but back in Halloween Day back in '89, long time ago, there was a primetime episode of the real Ghostbusters called The Halloween Door, and it was a special that aired Sunday night. I had that thing recorded on tape, and I watched that thing over and over and over again. I think I even I loved it so much I rewatched it a bunch of times. So for me, that's a big nostalgic Halloween thing. I think I even showed it to your son Bob a few times when we were hanging out and had it on, and it was really good, and he got into it too, so that was real cool. Yeah, so those are my picks. But I really wanted to mention that one because just with the subject that we're talking about, I watched that thing so many times, and it was maybe like an hour-long special that aired like on ABC back in '89. Crazy.
So I got a few for mine. Once Bitten with Jim Carrey before he became
Once Bitten.
Yeah, what a great movie.
Forgot about that one.
Like a campy movie. Yeah, it was fun to watch. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the original movie with Kirsty Swanson.
Just like Luke Perry.
I do like Luke Perry. Cameo by Ben Affleck, who plays the basketball player that doesn't know what to do when the guy turns into a vampire. Silver Bullet, we talked about it last week. A great great movie to watch on Halloween. Not too scary, but it's got
Say it, Joseph, do your Gary Busey.
How am I doing today, Gary Busey?
I did have to put this one in there. I did not watch this until I was older, when I had kids, but my wife said you got to put on Hocus Pocus, because that's like a big movie. Good. So Hocus Pocus is one of them.
Hocus was good.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Charlie Brown, the Great Pumpkin, classic. You got to watch it.
All right, you got your animated one too. All right, I like it.
Yeah, you got the holes on the sheet.
None of the ones he's mentioned have actually been scary, by the way. What kind of guy he is.
A Nightmare Before Christmas. It's a Christmas movie. It's a Halloween movie. You watch
that's actually that's a good pick because it's 2 seasons. So I mean, it's awesome.
Great movie. Gremlins. I thought Gremlins was a good Halloween movie to watch, especially when we were younger. And then wrapping up, I got 2 more. I got Tremors, which I enjoyed watching as a kid. Kevin Bacon. Yeah. And lastly, I'm surprised neither of you guys mentioned this one. Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yes, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That one, my wife won't even watch. She's scared of hell of clowns. Yeah, I used to love that when we were kids, dude. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That's a weird movie.
My favorite scene in that one is when they, I think the police sheriff, I think he played Dean Wormer on Animal House, and they killed him, and they're using him as a puppet, as a dummy when he's talking.
Did they have makeup on his cheeks, right?
Yeah, makeup on his cheeks
or something.
Yeah.
So weird how they'd stick the straws in the little pods. They're like knocking them like cantaloupes and stick the straws in and suck their blood out. It was a trippy movie. Let me ask you about this one. Edward Scissorhands. Is it a Halloween movie? Is it a Christmas movie?
I think it's a good movie to watch.
You know what? That falls into that category. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I you know what? I'd call it more of a Christmas movie, to be honest with you. I think if I had to.
It does have Price.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm glad you mentioned that one, Bob. I actually had thought about that earlier. I think it was a final film performance, I believe. I know he had something that came out after that was a TV movie maybe, and then his last project I think was just his voice. So I think this was, I mean, you can call it like his third to last movie, but so awesome. I mean, it's like small role kind of type situation, but man, you don't think about Halloween without thinking about Vincent Price. Let's just say that.
I've watched his movies all over. I mean, that's the first one we watch. You watch House on Haunted Hill, The Bat, The Last Man on Earth. What's the other one?
Got such a great voice.
Yeah, he's got just an amazing voice. He's a great actor. We were watching House on Haunted Hill earlier today, actually, instead of watching the Texans because
I love Bill Hader's impression of Vincent Price.
Bill Hader does a great impression. Also, for me, going back to Edward Scissorhands, for me, it's more of a Halloween movie because it's scary how roided up Anthony Michael Hall looks in that movie. He went from like 120 pounds to like 210. Like
it was after Johnny Be Good.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Beetlejuice because I was watching an interview before this recording. It was on 60 Minutes and it was on Michael Keaton. And they were talking about his role as an everyman. And like he's like an everyman kind of actor. Like he could play a lawyer, he could play a cop, he could play a doctor, he could play a business owner, but his role in Beetlejuice and how it was completely transformational. Like you wouldn't think of casting a Michael Keaton at the time as Beetlejuice. Although when he was in Night Shift, I don't know if you guys remember this movie called Night Shift with Henry Winkler and Ron Howard directed. It was about these guys who ran a morgue, but they were running a prostitution ring. It's supposed to be a comedy. And Michael Keaton plays a character named Billy Blaze, and he is hysterical. And it just go on YouTube and find Michael Keaton as Billy Blaze. You're going to see some funny scenes. And you saw a little bit of Billy Blaze in Beetlejuice. So you know he had the chops for it, but I don't think anybody could play that character the way Michael Keaton did. Just he hit the mark everywhere. I mean, just so fantastic.
Yeah, he's a funny guy, man. He's a great character. They were supposed to do not a remake, but a sequel to it. Like within the past year or two, they were supposed to bring it back, especially with Winona Ryder. You know, kind of getting back into the spotlight because of Stranger Things. They were supposed to do a sequel, but it was kind of made like hush hush, and then there's not too much information on it. I hope they do it if they can bring back Michael Keaton and Winona Ryder. I think that'd be pretty cool.
That would be awesome. I would definitely watch that. So we're going to go ahead and go on with our selections. Bob, you're up first. What do you got for us?
It was a pretty easy call for me. My favorite movie, my most nostalgic Halloween movie growing up has to be The Monster Squad. I chose Monster Squad because it's my favorite horror movie growing up. It's one that I still watch over and over and religiously and quote all the time to this day. It's a fucking awesome horror movie, and it's like The Goonies meets The Lost Boys. A group of junior high kids taking on Dracula, the Wolfman, and the other classic horror movie monsters to save the world from evil. It just brought out it had so many cool tropes and so many cool one-liners. It brought us the best horror movie line ever. Wolfman's got nards. You need to get that shirt. You need to get that on a shirt soon. The movie itself, it didn't kill it in the theaters in 1987 like the Lost Boys ended up doing, but it did have this huge cult following and this resurgence following their 20th anniversary and their Blu-ray release in 2017. Not to mention they had this badass, they did a badass show at the Alamo Drafthouse in Austin.
Yes.
Should have gone in 2017 with the cast and some of the crew and they did the film release, the 20th anniversary. And it was, even the cast was freaking out on how huge and what kind of following they had. I saw an interview with Phoebe. She's the little girl in the movie. And she was saying that when she was in college, she was dating a guy and she'd been dating for like 5-6 months. And then she blurted out, "Oh yeah, I was in a movie and I was in one of those. I was in the Monster Squad." And he was like, "Holy shit, you're in Monster Squad?" She's like, "Yeah." She goes, "You watched it?" And he was like, "I love that." The cast itself didn't even know how huge the movie turned out to be because it was such a flop at the theaters when it first came out in 87, but it was awesome, man. And watching the movie, the monster makeup is probably one of the best I've ever seen in any horror movie, including the awesome werewolf transformation. I mentioned this last week when we talked about American Werewolf in London. The werewolf transformation in The Monster Squad was fucking awesome in the phone booth. I really do love everything about this movie, especially the one-liners and the funny things like, Frankenstein's monster checking out Patrick's sister undressing in the window. I thought that was hilarious. They have a montage. You can't have an 80s movie without a montage.
Rock until you drop.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I still like Sean's t-shirt in the movie. He has that Stephen King rules that they've remade and they sell too. Dude, it's just such a fucking awesome movie. And it has something that I like too. Like it has kids playing kids, the junior high kids. So they cuss. They cuss at each other doing, kid things,
Very true.
Checking out. It's not like, oh, they're real, they can't curse. They can't do this. They can't do that. It's really 80s. That's what I love about this movie. Classic movie. We watched it last night. We drank and watched it last night. I love everything about it, man. What do y'all think?
It's a quick watch. I mean, it's only like an hour and 22 minutes.
Yeah, it's a quick watch.
Yeah, it was a quick watch. I was watching it this morning and I forgot how good it was. And it's funny that you mentioned Phoebe. For our generation, you could be dating a girl and she could say, yeah, I played the baby that was getting christened in The Godfather. Oh, yeah, cool. That's cool. If somebody says, yeah, I played Phoebe on the Monster Squad. Oh, really? Holy shit. That's amazing. You know, I mean, it has so much levity with us. It has so much credit with us that was cool. That's a cool story. I remember first watching this movie. I think I was I know I was in elementary school, and this one kid was running for student council president, and we would do these events. And his event was, you know, you pay a quarter and you get to watch a movie at the cafeteria. The movie happened to be Monster Squad, and I mean, kids were yelling and kids were shouting and kids were clapping. I mean, it was probably like being at the Alamo Draft House back in 1987. And of course, the kid won in a landslide. So I remember that movie the first time watching it with friends, and it was such a good time. And I must have been maybe 10 years old, and it was such a good time. It borrowed a bit from Goonies, as you mentioned, all the way down to having their own version of Chunk and having their own version of Sloth in Frankenstein's monster, as you mentioned. I think it's completely different from the Goonies in a lot of facets, but the Goonies had a bigger budget. They had better actors, and those comparisons, I think, led this movie to not performing well in the box office. I think a lot of people saw, well, the Goonies had Spielberg backing it. The Goonies had this. This movie was written by Shane Black, who later wrote all the Lethal Weapon movies. He wrote Last Boy Scout, The Nice Guys. He was in The Predator. He did a lot of rewrites on The Predator. And he's a talented guy. This was his first movie.
Really cool. I hate to cut you off, but on Lethal Weapon, they use the same house. Murtaugh's house and Lethal Weapon is the same house that Sean and them. Sean's out the main house in the Monster Squad. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Really cool. And it's a fun movie. It's replete with all the 80s tropes, the musical montage. I still remember the song. I mean, even before I watched it, that rocket till you drop or whatever, however it goes, it's a great 80s montage. Favorite part of the movie is when the scary German guy is proven to be a good guy.
Scary German guy.
Scary German guy. And he's helping the kids with obtaining the information, right, about the monster. And he says, after all I've known monsters in my life, and you see like the concentration camp markings on his arm.
Auschwitz,
the Auschwitz. And you didn't know that when you were a kid, so that was kind of like a point for the adults. Like, look, this is really serious. I thought that was a great scene. I thought that was a very intelligent scene for a kids movie, and a lot of great memories. This film introduced me to Burger King. You guys are too young for this, but in the Valley, we didn't have a Burger King until like 1988. So I remember when they're watching the drive-in theater from the roof of their house. They're having Burger King. And I was like, I want to have that. I had Burger King for the first time. We drove to San Antonio and we went to visit my cousin, and they're like, what do y'all want to eat? We got all these badass places. I want Burger King because I've never had it before. And I saw it on the Monster Squad. So I had my first Whopper thanks to Monster Squad. And my last after that. Wolfman Has Nards is another classic scene. You mentioned that. I don't think the word nards took off as they may have wanted, but still funny because when you say nards, you immediately associate it with a Monster Squad. So good marketing. You know, another great scene is when they need a woman who is a virgin to read the book. The guy's like, Steve, he doesn't count. Yeah, I love that scene. Yeah, there's Steve, but he doesn't count. Doesn't count. And then the little kid Eugene, who we don't know why the fuck he's there, but he's just hanging around with him. Is she a virgin? Yeah. She was like 5 years old.
That kid Eugene has the best line. He's like, monsters in my room, and the dad gets all pissed off at him. He's like, not gonna sleep with your mother and me tonight, son. Fucking mommy's actually in this closet.
And the father's like, ooh, scary monster. And the mother's like, right?
Get out of here. Go.
That's a funny scene.
I was like, what the fuck?
And also he writes to the army like, hey, come save us.
Yeah.
We're being attacked by
he writes to him in crayon. They fucking show up at the end. We're the monsters.
The only thing about Eugene that has for some reason, he's at the clubhouse. He's wearing a Confederate hat. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't age well. I don't know why he's wearing the Confederate hat for, but
I think it takes place in Louisiana. I want to say that's where they shot the movie. So maybe that's where that's like
Rudy was my favorite character in the movie. The older guy. Oh, he looked older, right? But
the older guy with the Fonzarelli leather jacket, and a toothpick, or smoking cigarettes over him, smoking cigarettes.
He was drinking beer.
riding a BMX bike and drinking beer and smoking cigarettes.
And he was looking at the other kid. What's the kid's name? His sister. He was peeping.
Yeah, he was looking at Patrick's sister.
Yeah, Patrick's sister. And there was a blackmail scene that probably doesn't age very well too, where they want the sister to read this, and he's got photos of her undressing. He says, "I'll put this right on the locker room of the football team and the student council bulletin board." And I mean, that revenge porn doesn't really age well, but
no shit.
You know. And this movie, guys, to wrap up my points, it should have been bigger. Kids kicking ass. I mean, we love it, right? That never goes out of style. It's funny. I mean, there's some things that don't age well, obviously, but it's 1987, right?
Yeah.
Monsters are great. I don't know how Dracula knows how to ride a car and Jimmy Electronics, but he fucking knows how to do it. You know, and it's
Dracula,
just,
goddamn.
It's just the right amount of scary, not too much, not too little. I think studios stayed away from films like this because they weren't making money, because Goonies set the bar too high and they just couldn't figure out why these movies just can't make money. And we forgot to mention Wolfman was played by Uncle Rico, John Green.
Yeah, Uncle Rico was a Wolfman.
Yeah, he actually looks younger in Napoleon Dynamite than he did in this movie. So yeah, shout outs to Uncle Rico. Joseph, what do you think about this movie?
You said a lot of pretty much what I was going to say.
It's only an hour and 22 minutes.
Supposed to give a summary of this fucking movie. Just a quick little anyway. Yeah, what a great movie. We, like Bob mentioned, we watched it last night. We were hanging out, you know, on Saturday night, and so much fun watching these scenes again and laughing. I think I mentioned earlier when we started, like the thing that makes a great movie a great nostalgic Halloween movie or you know, scary movie, whatever you want to call it, something to watch this time is being able to watch it over and over again and still laugh. And that's what we did. We laughed so much yesterday watching it. True, like you mentioned, there's a couple of things that don't age well. I think they used the F word and not fuck, because we can say that one. But they kind of fat shame the kid, but he gets, you know, he gets his revenge at the end, like with the shotgun, and my name is Horace. My name is Horace.
He shoots a gill man. Yeah.
You know, so he got his moment, you know, to tell him, hey, fuck you, you know, this is me.
It was a kid from the Wonder Years, wasn't it?
Yeah, Wayne the brother.
Wayne.
So that was good. If I'm not gonna, I guess, because maybe we're supposed to. My only thing would be is like Bob mentioned, with the great makeup for Wolfman, for everybody in this movie, everybody looked great. I thought they gave half-ass job to Frankenstein. I thought he could have looked a little bit more, you know, maybe menacing or somewhat, but that's not his character. So I just thought they could have done a better job on him, considering everybody else looks so freaking awesome. And that's probably the only thing I'll nitpick, but great movie. So funny. One of the funny things I remember too, specifically when they're getting everything together, one of the funniest things that I remember from this movie is watching, what was his name? The leather jacket kid, Rudy, walk onto an archery and steal a bow and arrow and arrows, and without anybody seeing him. He fucking stands out like a sore thumb, like you mentioned, just like the Fonz. And so I don't know how he did it, but just it was so much fun to watch this movie. And I think we don't see this movie. Nobody airs it on TV, and that's what's sad, because because of its box office, whatever, maybe it doesn't get the recognition like you all mentioned, but this movie should be shown on Halloween. I mean, you just clean it up a little bit for TV, and this movie, I mean, it clearly has a cult following, like Bob mentioned, like we've mentioned. So why doesn't this movie come out in the month of October every year? I don't understand. Such a great movie.
That's what I'm saying, man. I agree with that 100%. I don't know why it doesn't.
I love this movie for the nostalgia base. I think that all the stuff we listed about the drinking and smoking and then the fat shaming and the peeping Tom and the revenge porn and the Confederate hat, I think producers or I should say TV executives, like, that's too much. That's too much for us to cut down and run it. And you know, you mentioned that Rudy going into the archery field and sneaking in. To me, I thought I have a bigger nitpick on this one. How about when the cops are trying to shoot the Wolfman? Of course, you got to kill him with a silver bullet, right? They're shooting him, and then they're like, you know what? Let's bum rush him. And they're like trying to tackle the Wolfman.
Goddamn, the wolf! At least they weren't scared. Like, not calling me a pussy. I charged at him with my nightstick. Yeah, they're like, hey, come here. Like, what the fuck are they doing? Trying to jump on his back.
And again, too, the army showing up at the end, like, how the fuck is the army going to show up with a little, just because a little kid? It's just it's so great. They showed up all late though, but I mean,
of course, after the fact.
Eugene was the funniest to me. Was the funniest part of that movie.
Michael Faustino's little brother,
David Faustino. Michael Faustino's the name. Yeah.
He's a Bud Bundy brother.
Bud Bundy's brother. He looks just like him.
Right,
but I think again the makeup, the way they made the mummy look in Dracula and the Wolfman and the creature from the Black Lagoon and even Frank. I know Justin didn't like him, but
no, it's not that I didn't like him. I just thought they could have done a better job considering.
I thought they all looked great. Like the whoever the makeup artist was I think we mentioned this last week. It's too much CGI and all that bullshit that they try to do nowadays. But back then it was all bogus. Makeup and bogus. Yeah. All right, let's move it on. Let's go. What do you got for us, Rand?
All right, so my selection is The Lost Boys, and I got to start off with my favorite line in the movie. "You're a vampire. I'm telling mom." Great.
Sucking vampire.
It was originally intended, The Lost Boys was to be a campy sort of Goonies gone vampire movie, but once Joel Schumacher, rest in peace, took over the helm, he turned it into a more creepy, dark, robust, traditional teenage horror movie that we all come to enjoy today. According to The Atlantic, The Lost Boys may have been campy, but it also challenged common conventions of family life in America. You saw at the time, it was in the 80s, there were higher divorce rates, a fear of the disintegration of the family structure in America. And Lost Boys challenged these notions by showing two non-traditional families. You had the family of vampires and you had the single mother who had to move back with her father, with her two sons to start a new life. A cultural phenomenon. This movie cultivated the tone of what the modern day vampire should look like, right? Vampires before, they were like Count Chocula, Dracula. Now they were cool, young, great looking. They got rid of the Dracula. Coats. Yeah, trench coats, mullets. This movie laid the groundwork for the modern day vampire. And so many movies have lifted from it. We mentioned Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Twilight, Blade. Now vampires were cool. It grossed over $32 million on an $8 million budget, so a big buyback. Divorced mother Lucy and her two sons, Michael and Sam, moved to a beach town in California to live with their quirky grandfather, right? And you won't forget the name Michael because it's repeated 118 times. Characters can't address him without saying his name after every sentence. Things are afoot when we see flyers of missing people, pictures of kids on milk cartons, setting the tone of this town. We hear people are strange in the opening credits, which was a cover by Echo and the Bunnymen of the Doors song, which was freaking great opening, right? In the movie, Michael falls in love with a girl named Star, so his storyline veers towards his romantic pursuit of her. And Star is hanging around a group of vampires that look like a late 80s Christian rock band. And they are led by David, played by the great Kiefer Sutherland, who agreed to do this movie because of the soundtrack. He spent some time in Australia and became a huge INXS and Jimmy Barnes fan. So he decided to do the movie based on the fact that they were going to sing on the soundtrack or play on the soundtrack. Sam, on the other hand, meets the Frog Brothers, who, first of all, look nothing like brothers, but they are vampire hunters who have learned the craft through horror comics and seem to be the only two people in this town that are aware that shit's going down, which was funny. And mom is working at a video store, which is run by Max, who's taken an interest in her mom, Lucy, right? The mother, Lucy, I should say. After a night with vampires, Michael is slowly turning into a vampire and needs his brother's help. The movie really picks up when the Frog Brothers deduce that in order to help change Michael back, they have to kill the head vampire, whom they assume is David. But it's not. It's Max, the video store owner who's dating the mother. Now, I gotta ask you this. I'm going to take a break and get your thoughts. Tim Capello as the oily saxophone player. I still believe. What are y'all's thoughts about Tim Capello? And
completely unnecessary. What the fuck is going on? We didn't need a sexy sax man. We already had.
It serves no purpose. I mean, sure, everybody likes to go out and have a good time at a carnival, but this is a carnival, for God's sakes. This is a family environment.
Bunch of cool, creepy music, and people are strange, and then this fucker jamming out on them. It's not jamming out on a saxophone with a big blockchain around his neck.
And he's like thrusting his hips. He's all oiled up. I mean, it's incredible. Now,
I'm going to go wrestle or what?
I want to talk a little bit about Jamie Gertz, who plays Star in the movie. Jamie Gertz, to me, was like probably the second most beautiful girl at the time in film. I think Jennifer Connelly in Career Opportunities in 1991 overtook her. But Jamie Gertz, how incredible did she look in this movie? I mean, she had the wild hair. She looked phenomenal. The Frog Brothers were funny. They lent themselves to a little comic relief. Corey Feldman in an interview said that that Joel Schumacher said, "Hey, look, I want you to watch a bunch of Chuck Norris and Rambo movies to get into this character. So you see him with a red bandana and the camouflage really took it to heart. Jameson Newlander, who is the other Frog brother. I don't know. I thought he was okay. But could you imagine if like a young Keanu Reeves or River Phoenix played this other Frog brother?
He looked like a young Ray Romano.
So the third act of the movie is where the film gets its bones, right? Some creative kills. I remember people cheering at the bathtub filled with garlic and water. That death, the death by stereo, the deer antlers that killed David, whom everybody assumed was a head vampire. Max, of course, as mentioned before, was a head vampire and laid out a plan to make Lucy a vampire so she could be the mother of the lost. But Grandpa crushes into the house with his Jeep and impaling Max on a spike. And that was the end of it. Great movie, a quick watch. This movie still endures because it created the vampire. I'm going to go back to my initial point. The cool, young-looking vampire who isn't out there just to suck blood and to be mysterious and wear capes. Vampires were now people you wanted to look like. And the soundtrack was phenomenal. Lou Gramm echoing the Bunnymen, In Excess. Kiefer Sutherland is up there with Billy Zabka and Thomas F. Wilson as a top 80s bully. I mean, loved them in this, loved them in Stand By Me. And this movie did for Chinese food what Road Trip did for French toast. You know, and lastly, I want to talk a little bit about, and then you guys can make your point. But my last point is about the two Coreys. I mean, they owned the world at that time. They did this one, License to Drive, Dream a Little Dream, and we thought they were going to be around for a long time. Sadly, drugs and bad decisions, maybe their agents, and of course, there's a lot deeper details that I won't get into that they have brought to light. But I mean, just a tragedy. More so with Corey Haim, who had gotten sick, gained a lot of weight, was selling his teeth on eBay and lost his career. He looked like he was getting better, wanted to go out there and give it another shot. He was great in Lucas, thought he was going to be a rising star. And after Lost Boys and a couple of the other movies with Corey Feldman, I drugs and just a lot of things just, I guess, wiped them both out. And Corey Haim took the brunt of that tragedy. And it sucks because when you see them both on this film, they look like they're having the time of their lives. And they look like they're really having fun doing this fun movie. And to have that bitter taste in your mouth afterwards, like the sadness and just that morose feeling that this was their apex and it should have ran a lot longer. They should have had a good 5 to 6 year run of these tremendous buddy movies. It never happened. But those are my thoughts. What do you guys think about The Lost Boys?
Lost Boys, man, one of my favorite movies to watch. Definitely, again, with the makeup and the effects, definitely great. The transformation, man, they were creepy as hell. They were really, really creepy. I think Kiefer Sutherland looked fucking awesome as a vampire. You said like that new age vampire, no longer the guy in the cape. He's that like punk rocker looking dude, you know, with probably guys that Joseph would probably hang out with if he was around, if he was that age in the 80s, lived in Santa Carla. I love the movie. Great lines, the great acting. I love the kill scenes were awesome. That bathtub scene is probably my favorite death scene from that movie. Probably one of my favorite death scenes of any vampire movie. I thought it was badass where it starts, you know, they start shooting up from the sinks and the blood and all that stuff. I thought it was awesome. You mentioned People Are Strange, which is really, really cool. With the sexy sax, man, I don't know why the fuck they brought that. I know you mentioned that. I don't know why the fuck they did that. You had mentioned that the Frog Brothers were the only two that really knew what was going on, but apparently the father did too, the grandfather.
Oh, yeah,
like,
the grandfather.
One thing I couldn't stomach about Santa Carla, all the goddamn vampires. So it's like he knew what was going on. They do make it look like a fucked up town, you know, a lot of missing kids. I know Santa Cruz, where they shot the movie, they said, hey, you can shoot your movie here, but don't use our name. So they had to switch it up to Santa Carla. Cool little fact: Ben Stiller and Jim Carrey were actually brought in audition for a couple of the roles. I don't know if the movie would have been the same. I think he would have gotten more like Once Bitten. It would have been too goofy if Jim Carrey was in, or if Ben Stiller played Michael. I don't know if he had that same kind of. I don't know if he could play like the wannabe kind of rocker and with an earring and riding a motorcycle type of shit. But it's a great movie, creepy movie. Even Max turning in, you know, the very unassuming dude turning into the vampire. That vampire at the end looked really creepy. It's a good storyline. Cool. It's one of my favorite vampire movies. We're just talking strictly vampire movies. It's might be my favorite. It's one of the better ones. I thought everything they did was great. And it was really 80s and really nostalgic. And again, another movie that I watch every Halloween. And if it's on TV, shit, I'll throw it on no matter what time of the year it is.
For me, yeah, dude, I have to say the same thing. A lot of the same stuff. Maybe you did the research more than I did on this, but like I know you mentioned that this was a vampire movie with vampires or, you know, teenage vampires that looked like the regular kids. Little Gothy, like you mentioned that, and I thought that was cool. We didn't have the, like you mentioned, the Count Chocula or just the suit and tie with the medallion. That type of Dracula or vampire movie. So that was really cool. These kids, the actors that playing the pack of vampires, everybody did a great job. I don't think there was any of them that I was like, that guy's a fucking prick. And then of course Kiefer's performance is legendary. Everybody's always going to talk about that. I think some people would be surprised. Maybe there's probably a lot of people out there that don't know that it was him. Maybe now if they see that movie, they probably freak out. Maybe we have to tell them that, actually who it is. As far as a star, I have to disagree with you on that. I believe Mia Sara as Sloane Peterson, probably the top. As far as the top 80s, no, I'll tell you the top.
Jennifer Connelly.
Anyway,
Jennifer
career opportunity. That was 91, but still, Jennifer on that rocking horse or whatever. Never mind. Keep going.
I didn't go there.
You're gonna get in trouble, sir.
Anyway,
the scene.
I loved I loved. This is an awesome movie. It really is. It's got everything, it definitely stuck with the theme of the 80s, and that's cool. The Frog Brothers, some of them can be like, I know I don't want to speak negatively of the Coreys, but what's his name?
Corey Feldman.
I got a little tired of the fucking voice got to me after a while.
And I with Rudy from the Monster Squad.
That's probably my only thing. It was a good enough story. It was engaging, and I liked the little. I don't know if maybe. Do you remember the first time you watched it? Did you think that the boyfriend was the leader in the end? Do you see any, like, we see the hints now when we rewatch it, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to do that, and that's why it's great to watch these movies. No big complaints for me here, man. It's a great movie. I do love it, except for the sax, man. We don't need that. The hip thrusting at a carnival. What the hell's going on? There's kids there. I mean, come on, bro. A little too much. You look like you're getting ready to go fight Tatanka or something. Look like he was getting ready to go jump in the ring or something to fight Hulk Hogan. But yeah, great movie, man. I loved it. I still watch it to this day. We can always watch it. And of course, you mentioned the soundtrack. We can never. We have to. I mean, everybody. It's iconic.
That high note, baby.
But yeah, great selection, great pick, great movie.
I do want to ask you guys something because Kiefer Sutherland steals this movie. He's just so tremendous. He was a guy that they rolled the dice to ask because he was already a name at the time. He was already a good young actor. I think at the time he was only 20. He looks like he's 30 in this movie, but I think he's maybe 20, 21 years old.
Shadow.
Yeah, makes him look a lot older. But when I watch Blade, I think, and Blade was a good movie. The first one I liked a lot. Stephen Dorff's vampire character, a direct ripoff of the way Kiefer Sutherland played the vampire character.
I could see that, yeah.
In Lost Boys. I mean, from the way he talks, his cadence, the way he dresses and looks. I understand vampires were ripping off the Lost Boys. I mean, after every time we saw a vampire movie, but Stephen Dorff is like, the Diet Coke of Kiefer Sutherland when it comes to portraying that vampire character.
How dare you, sir? He's a nice man. He's a nice young man.
Joseph, what do you got for us?
All right, so I went with The Addams Family. The Addams Family 1, or just The Addams Family, whatever you want to call it. I love this movie. I love this movie so much. I don't remember when I saw it. I don't recall going to the theater and seeing it when I was, I think either 6 or 7 at the time, 91. So I'm more than sure that the first time I saw it, it was already released on VHS. Probably, I don't remember if we had it. We probably went to Top Video and rented it. Y'all remember Top Video?
Of course, yeah.
Probably went there to rent it. Judging by the film release when it came out in 91, let's say VHS came out a couple months later. I was probably 7 then, so we'll leave it at that. So 7 years old, watching The Addams Family, and I just loved it. I was old enough to not be scared, and there definitely, there really wasn't anything to be scared of in this movie. So it's not like it's that kind of movie, but to me, it's a great, and they show it every year. I mean, they show it during the month of October every year. So I consider it a good Halloween movie. You can watch family and whatnot. So now that I'm older, looking at the cast, I mean, what a freaking cast of heavy hitters. When you go back and look at this, Raul Julia,
Bro, Julia.
Yeah, he's the best.
Angelica Houston, Christopher Lloyd, a young Christina Ricci, Dan Hedaya. If I don't know if
Dan Hedaya,
Hedaya, Dana Ivey, who played his wife, and Elizabeth Wilson, the loan shark, Miss Bradbury, or excuse me, Dr. Pinderschlutz, or whatever you want to call her. She had a bunch of different names in the movie. I really enjoyed this movie. Again, the story, I enjoyed it very much. So, so I again, like I mentioned,
That's
I really. You can't say that. Let's start again.
You can't say that. Can I say that? It's hilarious.
The story I really enjoyed, and actually, you know, when I was reading up on the movie again, and the original story that we've come to know and enjoy was at time possibly not going to be the real story. Supposedly there was it's not a rumor, there was an incident where, you know, the writers and weren't sure whether or not that the Uncle Fester character was going to actually be Uncle Fester or just, you know, somebody actually being an imposter. And so there was actually kind of a little revolt by the cast, and there's a story you read about where they kind of put Christina Ricci out there, you know, 10 years old at the time, according to the stories, and they voiced their displeasure with it not being Uncle Fester actually being Uncle Fester, you know, with amnesia. So that would have been a crazy movie, I think, if we didn't have, you know, what we know as the true story. I mentioned Raul Julia's performance as Gomez Adams. I'm sorry, I can't unfortunately see anybody else playing this role, and I don't know if that's wrong for me to say. And I'm sorry to anybody else who ever plays, who may or may not play this character, voice or whatnot. This guy is Gomez Adams, and it was so perfect. I tried to look up some casting stuff, and I couldn't really find anybody else that, you know, maybe considered for the part. If you all did, great, I would love to know, but I can't see anybody else playing this role for, you know, these two movies. And anybody else that tries to play this character in the future, I'm always, you know, comparing them to Raul Julia, and that kind of suffers when I go actually maybe see another Addams Family movie or something like that. And Christopher Lloyd, I mean, playing Uncle Fester, great performance. I'm not sure, I think I had to be told that it was Christopher Lloyd, or aka Doc from Back to the Future. I mean, I was only
Marty.
7 years old at the time again, and I hope I'm not alone in that. I hope people also didn't realize it was him, maybe if they were younger. Again, the cast was great. It's a funny movie to watch. I don't want to call them one-liners, but yes, there's definitely a lot of things and quotes that we say from this movie. I think the way the suspense to it, the story with you know, them finding, you know, Fester, or quote unquote, you know, him coming to them, even though he doesn't realize he's Fester. I just thought it was all great. Really awesome movie, and I enjoy watching it over and over again. I find it funny, like we've talked about with these movies, and I'll probably watch it sometime this week or sometime, you know, in the weekend again, just because part one and part two, and and just on a numbers really don't matter, but the budget ended up being 30 million and it grossed 191. So I successful movie. I know we talked to but 30 million at the time in the 90s was a lot of movies. For it to make that amount back was a good thing, I guess. But you know, that to me doesn't really matter, because like we mentioned, and how Bob's pick, you know, it didn't really go over well at the box office, but that doesn't matter. It was such a great movie, and to me this movie is that as well. I can watch this. It's a great movie. May not have all the thrills and you know, chills of a supernatural scary movie, but it's a great one to watch. I hope that your kids have seen it, and I hope, you know, everybody, if for some reason you haven't seen it, go watch it and show it to your kids. I think they'll really enjoy it.
I have a suggestion. If they were to ever, and no disrespect to Raul Julia, because he knocked it out of the park, but if they were to ever create another Addams Family movie, a live version, the only guy that
you're gonna say The Rock. I know you're gonna say
not
The Rock.
Rock.
Don't say The Rock.
No, I got a name for you guys though. Javier Bardem.
Javier Bardem.
I think you can play Gomez. I think you can do Gomez. With our luck, we'll get Antonio Banderas, but I think Javier Bardem.
More than likely, right? Yeah, more than likely it's going to be Antonio.
Is he going to have the same haircut like he did in No Country?
Antonio Banderas.
You would have never guessed how many filming woes this movie had, as Joseph, you alluded to earlier. I mean, it was behind schedule, $5 million over budget, and it was being made by a troubled studio, Orion Pictures, which was, I think they had a few flops. I think they had 2 or 3 flops prior to this, so they were a sinking ship. So they had to sell the rights to Paramount. I think it was Paramount, and Paramount distributed this and made a lot of money back, right? Growing up, you watched a lot of old school reruns. Particularly, I remember watching a lot on WGN and TBS. And the popularity of the Munsters, another, you know, offset macabre family was way more apparent than the Addams family. So this was already a hard sell because everybody knew the Munsters because they were all, they had Frankenstein's monster, they had vampires, they had a wolf boy, and the Addams family was just two people who wanted to fuck all the time. And so it was like, how are we going to sell this? And of course, like Wednesday Addams and a bunch of offset relatives, which leads to the Batman tie-in. The Munsters were canceled due to low ratings going up against the Batman TV series. And the studio wanted Tim Burton to direct the Addams family because of his vision. Of course, it seems like a natural fit. But he passed that up to direct Batman Returns. Obviously, he made the right decision. But I would have loved to have seen Tim Burton at the helm of this Addams family movie. And the idea came from a car ride. A bunch of studio execs were going out to lunch or something. And one of the studio executives had a son. And he had his son in his car. His son was maybe 9-10 years old. And he was whistling the Addams family tune. He was singing the song. And all these execs said, let's do that movie. They're probably really high on cocaine and looking for ideas, and a 10-year-old boy shall lead their way, right? So this idea came from a car ride. The Gothic appeal I thought was big. I think coming off of movies like Beetlejuice and some of these other vampire movies we talked about, Lost Boys, there was some demand for the macabre, right? And the Gothic appeal. I think a lot of people like that for the simple fact that the way they look, the way they dress. Great one-liners, Raul Julia, Angelica Houston, Christopher Lloyd, Christina Ricci, they carried the whole movie. A lot of nostalgia and remakes started popping up in the early 90s. I think movies like this helped to launch TV shows turning into movies or being rebooted because of this success. It's a fun movie. My kids love it. And I remember when I was showing them this movie, I think the first, should I turn this off scene was when they were doing the stage play. And they were doing Hamlet. I don't know what they were doing, but they cut off each other's arms. And it was like Kill Bill up there.
I forgot about that.
I was like, maybe we should turn this off. But my kids were laughing. I told them it was catch ups. They had a good time. Bob, what'd you think?
That's the scene that bothered them. The Addams Family's classic. I did see this in the theater with my family. I remember going to see this at the theater. It's been one of those great movies that you can still watch now. You can watch with the kids, obviously. I watched the old TV show and the original Gomez Addams, and he was cool. He was funny. He was entertaining again. Like you said, just two people that wanted to screw all the time. That's just pretty funny. Pretty good, funny way of saying it. I really did like the way the way Raul Julia, transformed the character. I loved their take on it. I did watch it. It was kind of really goofy in the TV show, and the movie itself was a little bit, it was funny, but it was a little more, it wasn't as just straight up goofy as the original one. I think you said, the more the macabre, more the Gothic type of trend. It would have been really great to see Tim Burton do this movie. I wonder what his take would have been on the movie. You didn't hit it on the one-liners. My favorite one is Raul Julia is all depressed in the hotel. He's like, leave, and Miss Gilligan. I fucking love that line. Makes me laugh every single time. It was an incredible cast. Movie itself was good. The plot's okay, but it was a great. I love the interaction between Wednesday and Pugsley and her trying to kill him off, just like in the TV series, just like in the original series. They're always messing with each other. Christopher Lloyd was a really great Uncle Fester. I didn't notice. Yeah, I mean, I think as kids, you don't really realize, that actor was also, Doc in Back to the Future, but he did a great job. It's a great movie, man. It's a great movie. There was nothing scary about it. That's maybe my only knock. There's nothing really scary about the movie, but coming from the TV series, I mean, there wasn't really, you weren't going to really get anything that was going to scare you or freak you out a little bit. Besides, I guess, the kids cutting off each other's arms in the play. But it really is one of my favorites growing up.
Halloween for us, I mean, it's a kid's holiday, just like, baseball is a kid's sport played by adults, but we still enjoy Halloween. We still enjoy the nostalgia. It's that one time a year where we could just go back and rewatch these movies over and over. We never get tired of them. I was going to ask you guys, we talked a little bit about this last week. I talked about my satanic gorilla Halloween costume that sent me back from home. I want to ask you guys, what is your best and worst Halloween costume? It could be childhood, adulthood. What are your best and worst Halloween costumes?
For me, go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, for me, the best is probably gonna be the one that I spent probably the most money on, and it was a couple of years ago. I actually got a plague doctor costume, and I really like it because to me, there's nothing the imagery of the Plague Doctor is just so fucking creepy. I think that's one of the greatest Halloween costumes, symbols type thing. And that's because it wasn't necessarily, it's not a Halloween thing, you know, but it's just so like, it's the imagery is so crazy. So I actually was able to, I decided I was going to get this Plague Doctor costume and do that. Probably I guess worst was a patchwork ninja that I didn't realize at the time I was wearing like a ghoul mask. And I was walking around the neighborhood because to me ninjas always had masks, you know, so or some kind of thing. And I had somehow came in possession of like a karate gi. I don't know whose it was or whether it was real. It might have been a costume in itself, and I don't remember what was on the back of it. I think it had like a dragon or something, I'm not sure, and it was black. So I put that on, and I put on this ghoul mask, like you can picture a ghoul mask, right? You know, just a mask with a blank face. And I walked around saying I was a ninja, even though it was probably confusing people. But I actually had some good costumes. And there's pictures of like us when we were a kid, me and my older brother dressed as like clowns, and you probably put the right picture tone, make them black and white, and we probably look scary as hell. So yeah, I mean that's for me. What about you, Bob?
I think my worst costume, I think I mentioned the last one too. I think we had like a kid's like police hat or helmet, and they threw that on. I put that on, and I was wearing like a t-shirt and jeans and like a cap gun. Like it was just throwing together shit. My parents never really. I've always been this way, and it's been this way even now. I've never been the type to go out and buy a costume. It's just kind of like, let's see what we can throw together. I think the one costume they did buy me, it wasn't even a costume. It was just the old school rubber band Frankenstein mask. They gave me that, and I dressed in black, and I dressed as Frankenstein. I don't know what year that was. It was probably when I was like 6 or 7 years old. But I never really bought costumes. My best costume, I want to say, has to be the Ditka costume I wore at that Halloween party.
Oh, yeah.
Like that when I threw together, I'm dressed like Mike Ditka, Hall of Fame coach for the Chicago Bears. I think I look pretty good.
We might have to post that. I think there's probably a picture of us from all that.
Yeah, I'll have to look around if I can find one. But I've always thought this, and not just because that's the way I do it, but I've always thought that when people come up with their own costumes, they don't like buy the pre-made shit, but they'll go out and buy, you know, X, Y, and Z, kind of throw it together and come out as, you know, whatever they're dressing up as. I think that's way more creative and way cooler. I think costumes come out way cooler than just going and buying like, I'm going to dress like a fucking hot dog. I'm going to go buy a hot dog costume, or a Ninja Turtle. I'm going to be a Ninja Turtle. What about you, Ren? What was your best and worst? My
best, and I still have pictures of this one. So Joseph, if you have your Plague Doctor, and Bob, if you have a picture of you in the Mike Ditka gear, we could post that afterwards. I brought this Elvis costume. It was 2010. I'd spent Halloween Halloween in Houston, and so I brought this Elvis costume. I brought the platform shoes. I actually went to I brought it in I brought it in Austin. There's a place called Lucy in Disguise.
Yeah. My favorite.
Love that store.
Yeah. I brought it there. Place. Shout out to them. And I was either going to rent it or buy it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy this. I always wanted an Elvis costume. Of course, when everybody dresses like Elvis, they dress up like old Elvis who's about to die and shoot the TV and have a heart attack. But I was pretty slim at the time. I'd lost a lot of weight. And I put it on, and I was like, okay, this works. And I loved it. I got a lot of compliments. I had the pompadour and the sunglasses. And so the following year, I wanted to wear it again, but I gained some weight. So I went from love me tenders to love me some chicken tenders. So I was like, I really looked like fucking Elvis. And then the worst wasn't the satanic gorilla. I have one that was worse than that. So when I was in the maybe second grade, I wanted to dress up as Popeye. I just wanted the little plastic Popeye with the trash bag look that we had all in the 80s. And so my mom was like, okay, I'll buy it for you. Don't worry. I know where I could get it really cheap. I was like, okay, well, get me the Popeye. So my mom went to Mexico, and she probably went for dental work or God knows what. And so she came back and she goes, I got you your Popeye costume. And then I was like, oh man, I open it and it's like Popeye, like the face is just a bald guy. It has no like Popeye, no like cigar. No pipe. And it looks like a meshed up, like bald, like a normal bald guy. But that wasn't the worst. Like, you know how when you would put the trash bag costume on, they had like the suit, like it looked like he had the sailor suit on.
Yeah.
But it was just a one colored suit. And on the middle of it, it had Popeye like eating the spinach. It wasn't even the Popeye suit. It had a picture of Popeye, and like spinach was misspelled. It just said spinach, like with an sh.
It wasn't Popeye. It was
How many
Pepe.
S's are there in the word chicken?
Yeah, it wasn't Popeye. It was Pepe. Yeah.
See, it's Pepe. Popeye, you see, Pepe.
I remember I started crying like, this isn't Popeye. Like, no, it's Popeye. Look, he's got the spinach. I go, it's fucking lettuce. You know what I mean? Shit, you know, it's like it was like the worst. And I remember like the kids didn't really care, but they I think they kind of felt sorry for me though, because it was a very good costume. It was a very good costume. Anything else you guys want to say about Halloween or Halloween memories, funny memories?
Oh man, I loved Halloween. It's always been my favorite holiday. The trick-or-treating portion of, even when we were junior high, and like trick-or-treating and walking around and just goofing off and being funny. And I wish we had more Halloween parties. I know we started doing that when we were in college, and those were always a blast. So we used to have, everybody got dressed up. We used to have a good time. I'd like to, I don't know, man. My kids love it. My kids are all about Halloween and costumes and everything like that. Now that I'm getting older, there's more of appreciation for it. I wish I could do something like that. Go to a big Halloween party, like at a bar or at somebody's house, big house, and everybody has to get dressed up and shit like that. I think that's awesome.
One of the funniest things I saw a couple of years ago around Halloween time was I was watching a show called Metalocalypse on Adult Swim, Cartoon Network. It's a cartoon about a fictional heavy metal band, obviously death metal band. So I was watching it. You might want to, I don't know if I can say this, so if we have to cut it. But there was a little screen flash text or whatever that came out on the screen just before they went back to the show, and it said Halloween is a magical, wonderful time full of adventure, like imagination, little policemen, little doctors, little fire policewoman, everything. Like it listed all these like cute like costumes for the kids that we get to see. Like the kids get to be, the superheroes and whatnot and all this stuff. And basically the message was, you can be sluts and hoe bags any other time of the year. So please keep it classic. And I was like, oh my God, that's so fucking crazy. Man. Like, please keep it magical and whatnot for the kids this year. I was like, damn.
Some of the things we've seen out there, right? Some of the things they continue to wear. But hey, you know what? Halloween's fun. It's not, and I don't think it's a holiday just isolated for kids. I think as adults, we have as much fun with it because of the seeing our kids happy, and then also getting to dress up sometimes when we get a chance, and being around other people and celebrating. It's just a fun holiday. It's a really great time.
It's really cool. And it's really cool to see, like, as if you were hopefully into Halloween as a kid, you continuing that tradition with I don't have kids, but I've seen kids. I scare them off my property when I visit them. I've seen I've been trick-or-treating with some kids, and I've seen neighborhoods get together and put on these like things for the night where they'll set up stations at different houses, and they'll have and somebody will be playing music, and they'll just be all these great things for the kids. And it's just really awesome when neighborhoods come together and do this, and they'll get dressed up. The owners, the parents or whatever will get dressed up and hopefully not scare the kids. And I just think it's really, really cool. And it's such a great time of the year. I really enjoy this time, and that's kind of like what this topic was about today. These movies that just take us back to having a good time as a kid, and enjoying that. And I love that, and I hope we never get away from that message. And just everybody just always be safe as usual, and enjoy yourself this time.
And try and steal all the peanut butter cups from your kids' candy bar.
Joseph,
don't be playing those pranks on those kids where I ate all your candy. Don't do that shit to them. That's so fucking horrible. Fuck you, Jimmy Kimmel.
Who's paying the dental bills, Joseph?
Remember when we talked about last week when we talked about candy? A buddy of mine said, "Hey, remember we went trick-or-treating that one time and this guy gave us green little Bibles?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." So
man.
Yeah,
I remember somebody giving green little Bibles, probably in the same damn neighborhood. Holy crap.
So yeah, I would have taken the big cookies or whatever we had talked about last week. That's our show, everybody. Listeners, we'd like to hear from you. What is your favorite all-time nostalgic Halloween movie? What movies did we not mention? Most importantly, let us know what you think about the show. You may reach us at Formidable Opponents and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, which I just created, guys. I just dropping that on you. Just search for Formidable Opponents.
We're on Facebook.
We're on Facebook now. I decided to put one up.
Get ready for all the arguing and fighting in your comment section.
That's where it really goes down.
Creative Little Pill, thank you so much for the artwork. Got the Beetlejuice up there this week, so thanks to Dina at Creative Little Pill. Please follow her at Creative Little Pill. Next week, join us as we will be talking best 90s movie soundtrack. We're going to be hosted next week by Turn of the Millennials. You might remember them from our worst 90s music video episode, which was a blast. We're going to get to work with them again. This time they're hosting, and we'll be simulcasting that episode on here, and we hope you join us for that. So for Bob, Joseph, have a happy Halloween, and we will see y'all later.
The Wolfman's got nards.
August.